Most kind, thank you very much. Welcome back to Wednesday's show with Otis Dealey, Anne Diamond and Michael Bolton, who's going to have the rest of the headlines for you next, including terror alert at Teesside Seaside and carnage at Cheltenham. Afraid so. But first, we're going to find out who thinks we should ban President Assad's cronies from attending this summer's Olympics. 0207 173 5555 is the number if you fancy sharing your views. I know some of you are going to say politics has nothing to do with sport, but even so, can you justify giving golden tickets to the Syrian president's people? 8,000 souls have perished as Assad represses those demanding democracy. We'd arm and train the rebels who oppose Libyan dictator Colonel Gaddafi, but give the hottest tickets in town to the Syrian delegation. Anyone else think we should let the athletes in but keep the cronies away? Well, before the break, Otis said politics and sport should not mix, so don't invite any officials from Syria. Anne reckoned there should be a committee to decide who should be barred from attending, which would make some effort, because, of course, you've got the Olympic committee, International Olympic Committee, our committee, so that would help paper over some of the cracks. Michael thought Syrian athletes should be allowed to come, but not their officials, and that would be condoning the slaughter of thousands. Kirsty, what about people at home?
OK, we have Michael first on line 1.
Michael, good morning.
Good morning, hello.
Good morning. So, what do we think then, sir? Are you happy to see Syrian officials attend?
No, I think we should receive their athletes, but not the officials.
OK.
I think if we start picking and choosing people who can come and can't come, we'll end up, say, like with Saudi Arabia, they're not allowing their female athletes, which I think is completely wrong.
Yeah.
And also, there's evidence that they've also been oppressing their people.
Yeah.
We're still inviting the Saudi Arabian.
But you are picking and choosing because you started the conversation by saying you don't want the Syrian officials to attend.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I'm saying is we are going to allow them to come, so we shouldn't pick and choose. We should just sort of leave politics, sport and politics to one side.
There may be a compromise, and another compromise. I should move into politics here. I was reading the other day that out of the 83,000 seats in the Olympic Stadium, about 20% of them will have restricted views. So why don't we take the Syrian officials and just stick them behind the giant jumbo screen like that, so they get to see the entire Olympics like that? It's a thought. Michael, thank you for your call. Let's have another.
OK, we have Steve on line 2.
Steve, good morning.
Good morning, Matthew. Good morning, panel.
So what would you do with this tricky situation?
I think we should allow them in,
Yeah.
let them pass through customs,
Yeah.
let them set foot on British soil,
Yeah.
arrest them for war crimes and transport them to The Hague.
I like it. I like it.
I think I'm pretty sure I'm on solid legal ground there with that comment.
Yeah. Would you widen this out? Because I mean,
I was on the show a week or so ago saying that we should already be doing airstrikes. So, you know, we need to do something.
Yeah, but what about...
an enforced no-fly zone. Just be a little bit careful. We've learnt our lesson from what happened in Libya, mistakes that were made, power vacuum.
Yeah.
We need to get rid of that regime.
Right.
33 years, him and his father Hafiz, of murdering his own people.
Yeah.
That's just not acceptable to any rational human being.
But the trouble is that, well, all the experts say that if you take on Syria, Iran, its great friend, will potentially attack Israel, and then you have World War III.
Assad is Alawite and Ahmadinejad is 12 Shia.
Yeah.
Completely different.
Yeah.
The Messianic Armageddon cult.
But they are close. They're undoubtedly close.
Not as close as you'd like to think. You know that Hamas has now signed off from Iran.
Yeah.
They're no longer... Over the weekend, the rocket attacks on Israel from Gaza were Islamist jihadi. Nothing to do with Hamas at all.
Yeah.
And Hamas are calling for it to stop.
OK, going back to our Olympics, what would you do about Zimbabwe, Russia, China?
I would like to ask anybody that's listening to the show to look up US prison slave labour. Just Google that. You'll get to...
Sorry, Steve. What do you think we should do with Zimbabwe, China, and so forth?
Assuming that Osama bin Laden was actually taken out and assassinated,
yeah,
then why can't we do the same things with people like Mugabe?
OK, Steve, thanks very much. Let's have another one, please.
Oh, we're just having a bit of a problem with the calls at the moment, Matthew.
Oh, sorry, I'll go.
OK,
Sorcha, sorry, good morning.
Sorry.
Good morning.
Morning. What do you think we should do?
Well, I have to say the first thing that popped into my head was the same as the first caller. I still cannot believe that we're accepting Saudi Arabia's male athletes and not their female athletes because they're refusing to send them. I just think that's so sad. And, yeah, I mean, I think if I was in charge, I'd be tempted to ban lots of foreign cronies.
So you would go through the list, go through human rights records and cross names off?
I would be very tempted to do it. I'm not sure I should be put in that job, to be honest.
I think, Sorcha, you and I have quite a lot in common because I also feel that that would be a way of doing it. But I know, as I said, in my heart, I wouldn't hesitate. In my head, I know that would probably create more problems than it would cause.
Yeah, that's always the difficulty.
Yeah. OK, thank you.
If I don't misunderstand, you're talking about women's rights.
Saudi Arabia won't allow
not about murder that's going on, and the destruction of tens of thousands of homes where people and families live, and innocent people live, and it's a little bit more of an extreme and a little more obvious, I think, in the decision. You know, to send that message to a regime.
Also, Saudi Arabia has a lot more oil, so, you know, if you want cheap petrol, you may have to put up with no female athletes, whereas Syria doesn't have much oil at all, so...
We could try to make sure that only the female athletes are allowed in.
I like your thinking there. Sorcha, thank you. We've got time for one more.
OK, we'll take Jean on line 4.
Jean, good morning. Morning,
Good morning.
Jean. Hi there. What do you think we should do then?
I think I agree with Michael that we should let the athletes in but not the officials.
Right.
Because, let's face it, would we have let the Khmer Rouge in from the killing fields?
Yeah.
If they'd been around at the time? I think any nation that murders its own people should not be allowed in. And that goes for Zimbabwe, it goes for the lot of them, actually, that are practising genocide, shouldn't be allowed in. The people should, the athletes...
Let the athletes in, but not the officials.
The population should, but not the officials.
I'm glad we've taken your call as the last call, because there is a Syrian exile group, the name of which I'm afraid escapes me, and they've said that one of the big pluses with letting the athletes in is that they would expect a number. I mean, there's not many to start off with, but they'd expect a number of them to defect, which would send out a fantastic message, they say, to the rest of Syria. The absolute opposite of having officials here glad-handing our politicians, drinking champagne, and their regime, you know, the images of that being sent back to Syria, justifying what Assad is doing. So I think you're right. I think you're right, and at least that would be the happy compromise. Although I suspect all of our talk will amount to nothing, and we can expect to see Assad's cronies at the Olympic Village. There we go. You never know. You never know?
No.
I like your positivity.
Don't worry, it won't last long.
After the break, it's Michael, Positive Michael, with the rest of today's headlines for you, including Britain's biggest private sector employer raises the pension bar. Every little helps, there's a clue. And carnage at Cheltenham again. All the horrible details on the other side of this break.
The answer is a cold bottle.